My husband hasn't had a full proper erection for 3 years. We're both almost 50. He works long hours and all his energy goes into work. I've tried many things. Talking, weekends away, Viagra, etc. I've suggested counseling, hired porn DVDs, and really nothing has worked. I find myself looking at other men all the time, wishing I could have an affair just for the sex.
I don't like the distinction between men's and women's sexual health in terms of sexual health. That it's not just about like what happens in there, but it's also what happens outside of sex. It's very holistic.
Hello, Globies. Welcome to the World Health Investigation Podcast. My name is Jocelyn.
I'm Edna. We are young global health professionals and your hosts for the World Health Investigation Podcast.
Also known as the WHI, we will be discussing all things global health, unpacking the most controversial health and social issues,
as well as promoting new wave global health development and equity.
So, Edna, Adina, what's the tea in global health today?
There's a lot of tea in global health, and to help us sip the tea, we have a very special guest.
A special guest. His name is David. Davido.
Yes,
David Eck.
Where these nicknames come from?
There's so many. David is such a regular name, We have to add some
spice
spice.
it up.
Yeah.
Make it global.
Make it global, exactly.
Yeah.
So David, actually, we did the same course in BSc Applied Medical Sciences, actually at UCL.
So specific.
Yes,
So specific.
all of us did the
All
same.
of us did, yeah. And he did a master's as well at King's College London in global health.
Wow.
Hello, global health professional.
Don't flatter me.
And he's also a management consultant.
Yes, I
Big
am.
things.
Big moves.
Big moves, very different, very cool.
So a lot of you might ask yourself why we have David here today. Well, we have some tea for you. We're talking about men. But before we get into it, we're going to give you the pre-tea. Before we give you the real gist, we have the preparatory tea.
Of course.
The news of the week.
The news of the week.
Edna, spill the tea.
Yes, I got you. So you guys know of COP.
Yes.
COP. COP27 is happening.
Oh, yeah.
In Egypt.
Egypt.
Should I even dare pronounce the name? Sham el Sheikh.
And I do not disrespect the
Arabic,
Egyptians. They will come.
It's a very nice resort area in Egypt. That's where it's happening this year for the next 2 weeks, actually. So obviously this is the United Nations Climate Summit. All the world leaders are there. They're talking about climate change, climate mitigation, all the important things.
The hot topics of this.
But you know who ain't gonna be there?
Who?
Greta Thunberg.
Wow.
You guys remember Greta?
Yeah.
She came for their necks.
Oh
She
my
came for their
days.
neck. She's now 19 years old. She said, COP27, I'm not attending.
That's big.
She is boycotting COP27 because she says they are just greenwashing.
Ooh.
And part of it is in protest to the fact that Egypt has about 60,000 prisoners,
What?
political prisoners.
Oh yeah. Oh wow. I didn't know it was that many.
It was that many. They have 60,000
Why?
political prisoners because essentially Egypt these days, under the ruler that's there, is very strict when it comes to political freedom and expressing your political opinions, even for climate change activists.
Oh, damn.
So there's quite a few climate change activists that are actually imprisoned.
Oh,
And there's a lot of people even in research. Researchers can't say a lot about what's going on exactly with Egypt and its pollution. Everyone's just very scared to be imprisoned.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are protesting. What I thought was very interesting with these climate change, the COP27s, what I didn't know is, like, for example, this one is being sponsored by Coca-Cola.
Interesting.
Coca-Cola is one of the
Interesting.
sponsors. And apparently it uses fossil fuels to produce about 120 billion throwaway plastic bottles each year. And there's a Kenya civil society group that has actually pointed out that nearly half of the plastic bottle waste in its country can be tracked back to Coca-Cola.
Wow. How
That is
ironic.
How
Crazy.
ironic is that? What are you guys' thoughts?
You know what's funny? I even heard that the previous COP20 was COP26.
26, yeah.
Or one of the previous ones was sponsored by an oil company.
Yes.
Oil and gas company.
They're an oil and gas company just right there front and center.
This actually makes me laugh.
Yeah. Does it make sense, you guys, to continue to have these COPs and they're sponsored by all these big companies?
No, because at the same time as well, like in terms of getting everyone there, they're all taking planes. So, like in terms of sustainability, isn't really helping things.
No.
Yeah.
Private jets.
And the companies that go there, like some of them have business models based on like pollution and stuff. Like if there's clothing people, you are exploiting people, you are causing disruptions to sustainability. So like, what are they doing there? Are they gonna come there to say, oh, we're gonna dissolve our business? Or
I doubt it. I doubt it. Yeah, I thought this term greenwashing was very interesting. I'd never heard of it before. Like we all know of whitewashing. And for people who don't know, that's essentially when companies a lot of the times posture this whole eco-friendly thing, and some of them sometimes reporting they spend more money on marketing to look eco-friendly than they do on actual eco-friendly policies in their companies. So I thought that was super interesting. But in general, I would say, these meetings are obviously important for setting global agendas. But, it's very hard to take the UN seriously when they have sponsorship and money coming from Coca-Cola. Because obviously, how can you hold Coca-Cola accountable when they're the ones giving you money?
Yeah, but then it also makes me think more like on the bad side of things. Like they might say, okay, we don't have the money to fund these things, these conferences. So where are they gonna get the money from?
I don't know, man. Go on Zoom.
Anywhere else. Not anywhere, but not from Coca-Cola or the oil companies. Like the ones producing the most pollution.
At the very least.
At the very least.
So that was the news this week. But
Thank
for the
you.
real tea.
Wow.
The real tea. So a few of you, actually, some of you have complained that, you only speak about women's issues, everyday abortion, it's like women, women's rights. We said, okay, fine. We've listened.
We heard you.
We're speaking about sexual health in men. Sexual and reproductive health in men today.
Yes.
And number one, it's quite an interesting topic because it's so broad. It covers from like the most like sexual topics to like more like biological, reproductive types of things. So we're gonna try to just start off with a little case study that will set the picture and really depict what it means in particular to have something like erectile dysfunction, which is one of the most common sexual disorders in men.
Yeah.
So Edna, do you want to quickly just give us a quick read of what's happening?
Yes. And this episode is very timely because it's Movember.
It's in the light of men's health. This is the month of men's health, isn't it?
This is for y'all.
Yeah, it's actually an anonymous story shared by a woman from a women's media company called Mamma Mia, and she shared this anonymously. So Edna, go.
She says, my husband hasn't had a full proper erection for 3 years. We're both almost 50. He works long hours and all his energy goes into work. I've tried many, many things. Talking, weekends away, Viagra, etc. I've suggested counseling, hired porn DVDs, and really nothing has worked. He really doesn't say anything and I'm sure he's embarrassed.
You guys are laughing. Wow, this is serious.
Sorry.
Keep reading the story.
Serious.
Let him land. Let him land.
And I'm sure he's embarrassed. The last time he initiated things was at least 10 years ago.
10 years!
When our son was about 2. It took a long time for him to even agree to Viagra. When we do finally get there, he is attentive to me. It is good, but closing the deal doesn't happen. He's not hard, so it's literally an anticlimax. He would yell and get angry and defensive when I brought it up. There is now so much pressure about the sex that we are not having. I find myself looking at other men all the time, wishing I could have an affair just for the sex.
That is
Not the affair thoughts.
This woman aired it all out.
She really went all out.
Wow. No, I can tell this was serious for her.
What are our initial thoughts?
Initial thoughts. Well, it's a serious issue. It seems like it's very psychological for the guy in the sense that he isn't really that open to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think it goes to show that it's a taboo amongst men, maybe. Oh, that's just from my experience.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And that's what we're here. When I hear your experience, like, when you hear this case study, right? Obviously, like,
Yeah.
I want to know what you actually think, not what you want people to think. What you actually think.
Okay. Yeah.
What if you were in this position where
Yeah.
you are the guy?
Yeah.
What would you do, or what would be your initial reaction?
Well, obviously, nobody wants to be in that position. So, while the mindset that you'd be in is probably one of not wanting to disappoint your partner,
Yeah.
and with that comes other like emotions, like you'd be anxious that next time, oh, is it gonna happen again? So like performance anxiety, and that is like known to worsen erectile dysfunction as well. So stuff like that, I feel like I'd be thinking about it, and psychologically it just wouldn't be great. I wouldn't be in a good psychological state after the first time.
Yeah.
Would you feel open to speak about it?
Yeah, probably, because I'd want to make sure it gets fixed.
Yeah.
But thinking of it in that way probably might not be the best way. Like just thinking of a quick fix, because that's a lot of pressure. So yeah, I probably need to rethink a lot of things, not just when it gets to that point, but yeah, just everything.
It's interesting how you mentioned the whole the fact that it can be quite a taboo and it can be quite a difficult subject to talk about, but it's also not a quick fix.
Yeah.
Do you think that the way that society perceives men's sexuality and like being a man has any influence on that? Like, what is your like understanding? What to you? What do you feel is like the role of like being a man in this whole situation?
Being the role of the man.
Yeah, like the role of the man, like in society, like sometimes like there is this pressure to perform sexually. Obviously, like most of the time you see men like bragging about, oh, my wife, I can do this, I can get this many n number of girls. What would you say about the role that a man usually plays when it comes to this? Like what's your perception of like sexuality in this type of scenario, or more in general, more personally, if that's okay with you?
Yeah, I don't know. Just in terms of like breaking that down into what is masculinity, I feel like the common like view is that masculinity is just not femininity. It's just like men are the status quo, or like the
standard.
The standard.
Yeah.
And then anything outside that is feminine. Like there's no like balance of the two.
Yeah, I actually find this question interesting about like what is masculinity even. I actually find it hard to put into words like without thinking of things that are like stereotypical gender roles.
Exactly.
But because these days I'll think about like, okay, what does it mean to be masculine? But then even when I describe the things, I'm like, that could also be a woman, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I actually myself struggle nowadays to like define like what is masculinity even.
That's a good. The reason why I'm asking this question is because a lot of the time masculinity is associated with, I don't know, aggression and performance, especially in the bedroom. Like most men take pride in their ability to, get n number of girls or whatnot. So this goes back to the question around like sexual health and how something like this could impact whether or not we address it in society. So do you think that like men's sexual health is spoken enough? Do you think it's something that we're aware of? Is it something that we just brush over?
Me, from my point of view, I feel like as a woman, I would say I know less about men's sexual and reproductive health compared to how much I know about women's health. And I don't know if that's just because I'm a woman, so I pay attention more to issues that affect women, or if it's literally even in school, I feel like we do learn about like the menstrual cycle and all these things, but you hear very little about like what's going on with the prostate, what's going on with men's cycles, and all these different things. It's only now that when I've gone out of my way to like research and look that I'm now understanding the issues men face. And then when it comes to the point of men's sexual health and their masculinity, I do feel as if it's something that people don't talk about enough, especially the men themselves, because like we're saying, the like being able to perform sexually is very much tied to your masculinity. So I think there's part of it where if you're admitting that there's a problem with your sexual health, it's almost like challenging your own masculinity at the same time.
Yeah.
And that could mean, that could take a hit to your ego.
That's the word.
That could be a hit to your ego. So even admitting the problem, I think, is an issue. But I don't know, David, how you see it.
Well, first of all, I don't like the distinction between men's and women's sexual health. Just in the terms, it reminds me of like, remember in global health, like at the beginning it started off as tropical medicine. They kind of just said, global south, you do what you want, you have your own thing. But then now they're realizing it's more holistic, but there's more to it. So I was just doing a little bit of digging. And in terms of sexual health, that it's not just about like what happens in there, but it's also what happens outside of sex. It's very holistic. So CDC defines it as a state of well-being in relation to sexuality across the lifespan that involves physical, emotional, mental, social, and spiritual dimensions. And it's an intrinsic element of human health, and based on a positive, equitable, respectful approach to sexuality, relationships, and reproductions that's free of coercion, fear, discrimination, stigma, shame, and violence.
Wow.
I think that was a really good definition and a way to see it, because then in terms of what you asked about men's sexual health, like it creates a safe space. Like if people have more knowledge about both sexes and what's happening, that creates sort of a safe space for both genders to talk more openly about what's happening. Because in the same way that you're saying you don't know that much about men's sexual health, I feel like guys don't really consider women's sexual health. So it's better to just kind of see it as one. Like sexual health doesn't just, there isn't a split. It's like one continuous thing.
Yeah, and that's also like when we also think about trans people, like does it necessarily have to be like either or, and when they're making the decision, does it have to be that binary?
And it's good. I think you mentioned the CDC definition, the WHO World Health Organization, they will have a very similar definition as well, but they also include saying that it's not always binary, that there are people that do not identify as, either a man or woman. So they have like both sexual organs. And they also specify that for sexual health to be attained and maintained, the sexual rights of all persons must be respected, protected, and fulfilled. So, yes, respected, protected, and fulfilled. So when I heard that initially, I was like, okay, that sounds like nice, right? But then it's also like, okay, fulfilled. So that means on both sides, both partners need to be fulfilled. So then it's like, in a case like this where there's erectile dysfunction or someone is not fulfilled, are they sexually healthy?
Well, I think they have the right, also the sexual right to not fulfill as well.
You saved yourself right
to not fulfill. They have the right to do what they want, innit?
Because let's say in this situation, maybe the man is like, listen, I just want to focus on my career right now. Like, I want to abstain. I want to just focus on work. Like,
he has the right to do that.
He has the right to do that.
Yes. No, I think this is more in a scenario where both are consensual and they've both agreed they want to have sex, but there's one person that is not fulfilled. Like, it's not a matter of consent. Consent has already been granted.
Uh-huh.
But then
but
one person is not.
consent isn't a one-time thing. It's like continuous.
No. Like, okay, let me be more specific.
You need to be specific.
I think I know what you're trying to say. It ain't me who gonna say it.
You know what I mean?
Express
I'm
yourself.
saying,
Dance around the
right?
hoops.
Yeah.
I'm saying, right? As this woman said, that the times where he's about to arrive, he cannot. He cannot.
Constant
He
landing.
cannot land. So in this case, it's almost like obviously she has had to initiate so many times. The last time he initiated anything was 10 years
10
ago.
years ago.
Yeah.
It's not because he's not giving consent. It's simply either he's not into her or actually he does have erectile some form of disorder. But in this case, it's almost like is the woman justified in saying, she even said that she's considering cheating.
You're having an affair.
She's having an affair. She's already thinking that far. So is she would we say that is her thought process justified, or do we can't blame him, we can't blame her, but I do think, however, that's just my personal opinion, that if she's already thinking about cheating, she should go seek help as well. Like she
Carried idea.
you need to also like check yourself, sis.
Yeah.
Check yourself, just
Yeah.
but more on like, if she's not fulfilled in that aspect and her man is also trying, is she sexually healthy?
See, the first thought that came in my head was like, sure, maybe someone has erectile dysfunction, but sex isn't just penis and vagina sex.
Wow.
It took me a while to think. I was like,
Oh wow. Wow.
I'm just
okay,
saying.
what do you think, David?
Well, I mean, yes, there's numerous avenues you can take. Edna is right. But I mean, the guy, he has a lot of going on.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he's just not being open about what is actually happening.
Yeah.
Because stress is also a factor.
Yeah.
He might be on medication.
Mm-hmm.
He might be obese.
Mm-hmm.
Obesity also affects it. There's all sorts, the psychological dimension, but there's also the physical dimension, which was mentioned in the case study.
In the case, and that leads me on to the question I was about to ask you next, which is, what do you think causes this? Is erectile dysfunction? Should we tell all wives to not stress their husbands? Otherwise, he will not perform. Is that what we're saying?
Well, she might not be the cause. It says he's stressed on work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, yeah, there's two-pronged, two branches of causes. One psychological, and the other one physical. So under the physical one, you think of all the stuff that could go wrong. So like they could become sick. They might be on medication, or there's some other sort of physical related thing, like and then on the other side there's the psychological side. So depression and anxiety are known to cause it. So what if he has depression, or 10 years isn't uncommon, probably.
Yeah.
Like what if he has that? There might be underlying issues.
Yeah.
Then there's performance anxiety as well. The fear of failure, basically. And then PTSD, trauma, all of that sort of stuff. There's just a lot of stuff that you need to take into account, and that can probably go wrong. There are ways to try and, rectify,
It's not the end of the world. It's possible to fix it.
Rectify erectile dysfunction. But it might not work. So then I guess either you need to work out your relationship and enter a new era, or find another alternative.
What alternatives would you recommend?
I don't know. It depends. It's a free world.
It's a free world.
We're in 2022.
Yeah. The one that I think I hadn't deeped a lot was prostate cancer,
Yeah.
and also like
That's true.
even people who have recovered from prostate cancer, because obviously
So
one of the treatments is radiotherapy,
Mhm.
and yeah, that can have its like long lasting effects. That's one that surprised me as a cause of erectile dysfunction as well.
Yeah. And I think most of the time people think of, whenever you think of like men's sexual health, you automatically think, erectile dysfunction, that's it, right? But there are actually many, like, whilst it's one of the most common problems experienced by males, there are other things like low sperm count. So, for example, low sperm count would be a condition that affects the probability of conceiving, and it's usually caused by various factors. So, if it's diagnosed at the right time, the condition can be effectively treated. And people with low sperm counts may experience low sex drive, pain or swelling in the testicular region, and also decreased facial hair and other indicative signs. There's also low testosterone levels. So, that includes like, for example, like the male hormone levels that affect their overall sexual health. So, yeah, with this, the most common symptoms would be things like insomnia, changes in body fat, depression, as you mentioned, and infertility. And then last, you mentioned testicular cancer. So this is usually considered like period for everyone. And some cancers like that in the testes are often not given the disease burden that it deserves, unfortunately. So we're raising all these issues, and I'm sure people would may be thinking, why are we talking about sexual health? Is it a global health concern? Is this something that, why should we care? And what are the stats saying? So according to statistics, like general statistics that we've seen across the globe, 42% of 40 to 70-year-old men suffer from varying degrees of sexual disorders. So, and these diseases are caused by a variety of biological and psychological factors, as David just mentioned. And in this world, there are about 15% of couples that are affected by sexual disharmony. And amongst these, 40 to 50% are because of male factors. And obviously, it's not to put the stigma on men to say that, okay, like, we're gonna put the burden of like sexual health on like men, but unfortunately, most of the time when there's like there are big issues within marriages, within like relationships and couples, most of the time it goes from like it being like, a simple discussion around, why don't you have sex, to it's a huge problem we need to fix in our marriage and whatnot. So not just for married couples, but like just couples in general. So it's quite an interesting one, because that's basically what sets the most like many family units don't feel that, if you're like past the age of 50 and you don't feel like sexually satisfied, then you may not fully even interact with your kids and whatnot.
Yeah. And I think for me, beyond just sexual and reproductive health related to the ability to have sex, it's also just when we talk about STIs, sexually transmitted infections, obviously those also impact men, HIV, gonorrhea, chlamydia, all of these things that, are, top killers in the world every year, they also affect men. So obviously we should care as well about men's sexual and reproductive health.
Then there's also the element of the definition that we talked about earlier, and just being holistic, and the fact that sexual health also includes stuff like coercion and like violence as well. So in that regard, like, in terms of men's sexual health, how do we present violence against women as well, and people who don't identify as a man or woman, like as the other.
No, so those are really always some very, very good points. I have another bold question to ask. So we have mentioned erectile dysfunction, STIs, prostate cancer. We've mentioned a bunch of things. We've not mentioned birth control.
Wow.
We have completely ignored birth control. And my question is, most of the time when you think of birth control, you automatically associate it with women and like taking, I don't know, either you think of a condom or you think of pills, etc., etc. So my question for both of you, David, Edna, you too. Should we encourage men to take more of the share of contraceptive responsibilities?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why?
Well, if you think about it from just the time perspective, a man can impregnate numerous different women within the same year if he wanted to.
Facts.
If a guy wanted to, as long as they have the capacity, well, they don't even need the capacity. Some people just don't care about what they leave behind. But anyway,
Nick Cannon.
huh?
Nick Cannon.
Nick Cannon. Yeah, that man does not care.
Oh.
He is spreading his seed.
Yes.
And he's leaving behind
Yeah.
damage.
So, because of people like that, fam, that's true though.
Yeah.
Because of people like that, it would be best if people like that weren't able to cause that damage. Like in terms of, that can seriously change the trajectory of someone's life, especially if they don't receive the support that they should. Like women in global south and stuff, that could potentially stop them from going to school, stuff like that. So reducing that could probably reduce the burden on women, and that's something that should be moved towards, definitely.
Yeah. A man can be involved in a pregnancy, like causing a pregnancy, but he doesn't have to really stop his life. He can just carry on. He can continue his job. At most, he'll take 2 weeks paternity leave, maybe, even if he's allowed. Even.
As if he's allowed.
So when it comes to pregnancy, I feel like men should take more responsibility for that, because it takes 2 to tango. And that's the other thing where I'm like, I feel like for women, there are so many options in terms of contraception. You have so many different choices. Whereas for men, it's the condom and
Vasectomy.
Yeah.
vasectomy, abstinence, maybe. Some will say pull out method.
Yes. I would.
I don't count that one.
You know what's actually funny is like I saw this on a website that was referencing a WHO, and they said that until very recently, the only types of male birth control in existence that were entirely within control of the man were barrier methods and some natural methods, and the only 3 include male condoms, vasectomies, and the withdrawal method. The pull-out method. And they said that male condoms and vasectomies are incredibly effective at preventing pregnancy. But the thing with vasectomies is that they're permanent, right? They will never...
No, you can remove them.
You can retie the tubes. Yeah, bro.
Oh, wow. I just thought that... Why is this man saying that he was...
Nah, that's a common misconception, actually, that stops men from actually getting them.
Yeah.
Because they don't think that they can undo it. But,
so why don't men do it?
I don't know. They probably feel shy. I don't know.
Say I'm shy.
They don't want the doctor to see.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
And they said that the vasectomy is also much less invasive than the female equivalent of like a tubal ligation, and it's also much cheaper than that. So maybe we should encourage men to use that more.
Yeah. But I mean, besides that, in terms of actually preventing sexually transmitted infection, I mean, as long as you don't have protection, you're still relatively likely to get STIs.
Yeah.
So it just helps in terms of pregnancy, but not so much if you're actually trying to prevent disease, public health perspective.
Yeah.
That's true. Still wear your condoms.
Prevent STIs, and and the one last thing that I don't think we touched on was we mentioned the causes of erectile dysfunction, which would be stress, maybe depression, some psychological factors, but then there's one that we failed to mention and it's almost overlooked. Masturbation. Could we say that? Because a lot of the time I think the explanation is that if you if it's excessively done, then you kind of trigger that part of your brain that automatically just like shuts down when you have like real sex. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I had read about that in terms of like, okay, a lot of the times I'm like, yeah, masturbation is fine. Yeah, you can do it. It's maybe even healthy, some people will say. But yeah, that I've read that when you do it excessively, it almost like reduces your sensitivity in some sense, your sexual sensitivity. So you can go overboard with it and it can actually start impacting your performance.
Do you have anything to add?
Nah, like yeah. In terms of overstimulation and stuff, yeah, it just goes hand in hand with
Hand in hand.
oh wow. You guys are sick.
It's Edna, not me.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
No, you said two out of pocket things. Nah, to be fair, it's not out of pocket. Anything is permissible for the purpose of health.
For health. I'm doing all this for health.
Yes.
So yeah, I was just saying that it goes hand in hand with pornography use as well. Because you can learn quite a few different unhealthy sexual behaviors from watching, especially if you're introduced to it from quite a young age, as most people are in this digital aged. So yeah, you probably have to unlearn a lot of stuff before you can actually have a healthy sexual relationship. Yeah, and that includes like the performance aspect as well. Yeah.
What do you
No,
mean?
just because like when you watch it, probably like you learn a lot of scripting and cues that you wouldn't know beforehand. Like you'd think things are normal, which might not necessarily be normal because there's so many different categories and
it's not real
and
life.
it's not real life.
Yeah, no, it reminds me of, I don't know if you guys ever watched Euphoria. No, it's a show on HBO. Like, there's a scene where one guy is having sex with his girlfriend and then he just chokes her out of nowhere. Yeah, literally. They're meant to be like high school students, and so she's just there like, what the hell? He's like, yeah, I know, I've seen this. I thought girls like this, and she's like, no.
Yeah.
Who told you that? Like, she was quite traumatized as well. Like, why would you just do that? So yeah, that's just to your point. Porn isn't real life.
It's not real life, and it could have an impact of how you actually perceive sex and your sexual relationships.
And that might even impact your enjoyment as well. Because if you like make that your expectation, then anything that falls below, like you might not go up.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Just like how there's a resistance to antibiotics, there's also resistance to sex.
Wow.
Look at my geek joke. Anyways, what advice would you give to listeners, like the men listening to this, like Globies, your younger brothers, your siblings, your cousins? What advice should people take from this? I mean, women as well. We're also concerned, right? So, if you're,
What's so funny?
if you're in the case of this, woman in our case study, she was clearly very concerned. So it would impact us all, and also we want to have that more holistic approach, right? So what advice do we have for the Globies? What would you say? I'll start with David because
Well, first of all, I speak from my own experience, not for all men. Let's just get that out there.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first piece of advice I'd get is definitely beware of your mental health and like your psychological state at all times. Try and take secondly, that's the psychological part.
Okay. To break it down.
And the second point I'd make is to take care of your physical health, because that actually does have an impact, especially for young guys, like stopping smoking, excessive drinking, exercising, cardiovascular health. All of that impacts your ability to perform on the day as it goes.
On the day.
Perform on the day. Then just be more open about sexual health topics. It's better that you have knowledge than to be in ignorance, because that can cause a lot of harm, not just to you but to other people, even in terms of how you form relationships with whoever it is you form relationships with. You don't want it to be harmful. You don't want it to
No.
be toxic. You don't want to end up like the couple whereby you can't talk to each other.
No.
So yeah, just make sure that you have an open space. Find people you can talk to about your issues, and don't be shy.
Don't be shy.
Don't
Don't be
be shy.
We don't bite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Well, for this segment, I genuinely thought, I was like, I'm a woman. What can I tell other men?
Yeah.
And so I thought, why should I get input? Why don't I just ask other men? So that's what I did. So we're just gonna cut to some audio we collected from just different men giving advice on what you should all do when it comes to your sexual health. So we'll cut to that now.
Alright, so my piece of advice would be for guys to get tested as much as possible if they have multiple partners, or even if they have a single partner, depending on the nature of their relationship.
I hope my fellow brethren have taken up the No Nut November challenge. In this hypersexualized world, challenge yourselves to conserve your precious sexual energy. Channel it to a more productive and creative endeavor that you choose. This discipline, practiced in India since a millennia, called brahmacharya or celibacy, can aid you in becoming a man of unparalleled focus.
As someone staying in South Africa, I think that the advice that most of us follow or understand is that staying safe and staying clean is the most important thing. So I think if I were to give advice to anyone, it's just to, not even in South Africa, just in general, staying safe and staying clean.
I would give 3 words to all men for having safe sex. First, risk. You have to know at least about risk of getting sexual transmitted diseases. Second, preventions. You have to know at least about how to protect yourself from the diseases. And last, treatment. You have to know at least about how can you access to the treatment if you have the diseases. This is not only for you, but also for your beloved people.
I would first like to tell men that sexual relation is not a high-level sport, but a pleasure between two people. That they should stop being influenced by porn film, which prone the resistance of man in sexual relation more than enough. That is, I have noticed the use of sexual stimulant such as Viagra, which is a bad thing at long because it leads to erectile dysfunction, which brings many complications in your couple or in your future couple, such as sexual dissatisfaction of your partner.
Sexual health for men is a combination of multiple factors, including a healthy diet, exercise, and good mental health. Given this, young men need to watch their lifestyles now, as neglecting this could have detrimental sexual health outcomes in the future. So eat well, rest, exercise, drink lots of water, cut down on alcohol and smoking, and practice safe sex. Both the future you and your partner will be thankful for your good health choices today.
Thank you. Shout out to all the guys that participated to my little project here and sending me their voice notes and contributing to this episode. So shout out to y'all. I won't expose y'all. Some of you asked to be anonymous, but you know who you are.
You know who you are.
Shout out to them.
A few of them have mentioned getting involved in things around, men's health. Like if there are any campaigns that you want to join where you feel supported, that's also encouraged. Some have also discouraged the use of certain stimulants like Viagra. I don't know, but listen. Anyways, my advice, obviously it feels a bit misplaced for me to give advice to men, but I'm not speaking from like, okay, obviously I care, right? That's why I'm speaking about this. So I'm gonna say, let's not make it a taboo. Let's have these conversations more and more. And you're not alone if you feel that. And it might be difficult to speak to your bro about it or speak to someone else about it, but know that I mentioned the stats here. It happens a lot more than you think. So you're not alone. So just like feel free to open up, even with your partner or like the person that you're with. Like open up and tell them, and you can find a solution together. Because most of the time, the issues that come down to that affect sex are linked to other issues around, like as David said, like mental health, etc. So just having that more of like a holistic approach. And also, I want to come for the women. Last thing, let's stop shaming, please. Let's this goes to men and women, because men do it as well. But I'm speaking to women because I'm a woman. Let's stop shaming men that underperform as well. Like, shaming, like body shaming, that kind of stuff. Like, let's also like avoid that, because you never know who is facing it. You never know. It could be your brother that is facing that problem and you don't even know. So as much as we promote body positivity, I think we should also promote this on the men's side as well.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. My last thing is, because when I was like thinking about it at first, I was like, oh, I know women have gynecologists, but like, who do men go to? And then I learned it's a urologist.
Oh yeah.
So
urologist.
if you have questions, if you have any concerns, find yourself a urologist. They'll sort you out.
And OPS actually say the issues, because I know some men actually go they go and do a checkup and they won't say what's wrong. I just go stare, look at me and look at you. So when you go there, actually, he or she might actually ask you some very private questions, and like around like the pain, the size, etc. Like, that's your doctor, right? So
yeah.
And they're trying to help you.
Yeah.
So I think that we can close it here.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode of the World Health Investigation Podcast. I am Jocelyn.
I'm Edna. We are young global health professionals, and we've been your hosts for this episode of the World Health Investigation Podcast.
And we have had a wonderful, handsome guest, David, joining us here today.
Yes.
And obviously not speaking for all men, but we obviously appreciate you for being here and, sharing your voice.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for listening, and please, I almost forgot. You guys almost made me forget. We have an event. We have an event coming up. Speak of the unspoken.
Yes.
Please sign up and register. We're having it postponed actually on the 30th of November due to unforeseen circumstances. So please do sign up in the link. We have it on our official website. So please go on there and click it. Make sure to follow us on our socials.
Yes, on Facebook, LinkedIn, just look up World Health Investigation Podcast. On Twitter and Instagram, we're at WHI_podcast. You can find us, follow us. We have an Eventbrite page for the event. Speak of the unspoken, hot questions in global health. Just look us up, register. And who knows? Somebody said David might be there.
He
just might make an appearance.
He just might be.
And I will be there.
Yeah. So this is your chance to also have a say. Come and debate with us. If you disagree with what we said here today, come speak to us in person.
We're ready.
Come beef me.
So thank you very much for listening, and have a lovely rest of the week.
Bye.
Bye.